Hi, my name is Anna Schouten and I'm from the University of Leuven. Today I will present Disagreement Head On or Avoid, Ideals and Perceptions of Handling Couple Disagreement in Belgium and Japan. In the symposium, the dynamic interplay of culture and emotions in social interactions. Much of the research on couple conflict has been conducted in North American cultural contexts. According to this research, disagreement between two romantic partners may be inevitable. What matters is not if, but how couples deal with disagreement. When dealt with in good ways, disagreements may provide an opportunity for partners to negotiate and realign unmet needs, to learn about each other, and to establish a sense of cohesion and commitment. In these cultural contexts, expressing anger and asserting individual desires are considered good ways of dealing with a disagreement that have been found to improve relationship satisfaction over time. While we have quite some knowledge about the good ways of dealing with disagreement in North American cultural contexts, we know little about valued ways of dealing with couple disagreement in other cultural contexts. However, what is considered a good or a healthy way of dealing with couple disagreement may differ from one cultural context to the next, because in each cultural context, different ideals prevail of what it means to have a good relationship. Expanding on previous research that focused primarily on North American samples, we set out to explore what the ideals and perspectives on handling disagreement may be in other, non-Western cultural contexts. We compared Belgium and Japanese cultural contexts and aimed to answer the following question. What are the culturally valued ways of dealing with disagreement in romantic relationships in Belgium and Japan? To answer this question, we conducted a focus group study. We used focus groups for two reasons. First, focus groups are suitable for exploratory research like this. They are thought to provide baseline information about a topic or study population we know little about. Second, focus groups are especially suitable for seeking a wide range of views on social behaviors, cultural values, and beliefs. We conducted 4 focus groups in each cultural context, of which 2 were all male and 2 were all female focus groups. The focus groups included 4 to 6 participants who were between the ages of 25 and 50 years old, in a relationship and cohabiting for at least 2 years. Before the actual focus group interview, participants watched an 80-minute video consisting of 6 3-minute clips from 3 Belgian and 3 Japanese couples who discussed a disagreement in the lab. The video served as a cue to provoke conversation and reflection, a method adopted from Tobin and colleagues. Next, we asked participants 3 sets of questions. Questions about conflict in general, of handling conflict in general, about emotions and behaviors during conflict. Finally, we analyzed the focus groups inductively using thematic analyses. This means that we assigned codes and themes to the transcript data without trying to fit these codes and themes to a pre-existing coding frame. Now, what made up a code or a theme? A code would be assigned to the transcript data when several participants, either across focus groups or within a focus group, repeatedly mention a particular way of dealing with a disagreement. For example, across focus groups, participants repeatedly mentioned that they listen to their partner when dealing with a disagreement. So listening became a code. Essentially, then, codes represent specific or concrete behaviors. A theme would be assigned to the data when it became apparent that certain codes had a similar function or impacted disagreement in a similar way. For instance, participants said that listening was a way to engage with the partner, and together with other codes, listening was part of the theme engaging with the partner. The Belgian transcripts were coded by 2 Belgian students, and the Japanese transcripts were translated to English and coded by 2 English-speaking students. The Japanese codes and themes are currently revised by our Japanese collaborators. Now, what did we find? There were several similarities between the Belgian and the Japanese focus groups. For example, both Belgian and Japanese participants say that communication, whereby partners discuss their opinions and point of views openly, is necessary for solving disagreement because it helps couples move away from negative feelings. Belgian and Japanese participants also have a similar idea about what good and bad ways of dealing with a disagreement may be. For instance, both Belgian and Japanese participants say that a good way of dealing with disagreement is engaging with or focusing on your partner. This involves listening to your partner and showing understanding for his or her point of view. Another good way of dealing with the disagreement is preventing conflict escalation, which may be achieved by remaining calm or taking a timeout. Finally, both Belgian and Japanese participants report that sticking to your own opinion and complaining about your partner are bad ways of dealing with a disagreement. While there were several similarities between the perspectives of Belgian and Japanese participants on couple disagreement, we also found cultural differences. Several themes that we assigned to the data are specific to each cultural group. In Belgium, these themes were disagreement is inevitable and signals a healthy relationship, and tackle disagreement. So in line with the North American perspective on couple disagreement, Belgian participants say that disagreement is inevitable. They say that disagreement comes with and is part of having a relationship. You cannot avoid them. Having disagreements may even be a healthy and a necessary process that helps partners learn from each other and grow in the relationship. And ultimately, disagreements may increase the couple's resilience once you know what the good ways are of dealing with these disagreements. For instance, one participant says, "Yes, that's why I said at the beginning that it's okay to have that too." She means a disagreement. If that is no longer there, then it is no longer healthy, I think. That's also part of being in a relationship. Because disagreements cannot easily be avoided or are part of having a relationship, Belgian participants say that disagreements ought to be tackled. They emphasize the importance of settling or solving a disagreement. A potentially bad way of dealing with a disagreement is to let it be without having reached a clear conclusion or endpoint. For example, Belgian participants will emphasize that you should never go to sleep angry and that timeouts are okay, but only if it is clear for both partners that they will return to the disagreement at a later point in time. If unsolved, the disagreement may only come back worse. For example, one participant says, "Yes, sure, as long as you settle the disagreement. I'd rather have it that way than when he goes away and then arrives at night and crawls into bed with you and you do not talk about it. And then you get up in the morning and it remains unsettled. That's no way to go about it either, because it will come back one day anyway." A prerequisite for solving a disagreement is talking to and communicating with each other. Participants underline the importance of talking to each other repeatedly. For example, one participant says, it is important to say everything that's inside your head. I cannot see what you think and you cannot see what I think, so it's very important to bring everything up so that you can talk about it. Their narratives reveal that talking helps to understand each other's point of view. It also allows you to gather what your partner thinks and feels, and once each partner's thoughts and feelings are out there on the table, it becomes easier to solve disagreement. Finally, talking helps to figure out what lies at the heart of a disagreement. The idea that disagreement is inevitable and that couples should tackle disagreement may be especially prominent in Belgian cultural contexts, but less in Japanese cultural contexts. The transcripts of the Japanese focus groups reveal that couples may evade disagreement rather than tackle it, and that they value mind reading and controlling their emotions. So while a certain degree of communication is essential for dealing with disagreement, and a certain degree of open communication may even be essential, this is not always adopted or used during a disagreement in Japanese cultural contexts. Instead of saying that a disagreement should be solved, Japanese participants say that they will sometimes settle the disagreement without a clear conclusion. For example, one participant says, "When we make a conclusion, an ill feeling remains. After all, it is not really the end, because it's just one that compromises. It is not a perfect conclusion, nobody is satisfied, and it ends with the relationship becoming strained." So from this part of the transcript, we can say, or we can tell that perhaps settling the disagreement with a conclusion is not always so good for the relationship. Also, participants repeatedly mention that partners may hold back during a disagreement. And while it is not always clear from the transcripts what partners may be holding back from, it might be about keeping the emotions to the self and could be considered the opposite of proactively confronting a disagreement. One male participant even says that it's because women hold back that the marriage keeps going. Finally, giving up or resignation may be a way to accept what is unchangeable. Although some participants say that giving up may result in the disagreement repeating itself, others say it may avoid a trouble or a fight. While Belgian participants or partners may encourage each other to talk about whatever is on their mind, Japanese participants mention they engage in more indirect ways of communication. For instance, Japanese partners may tend to read the atmosphere and guess each other's feelings. According to Japanese participants, these are both ways by which partners will try to anticipate or presume what the partner needs and feels, without explicitly asking for it or talking about it. For example, one participant says, "I think that if your wife, well, your partner doesn't express much in words, you should guess it by watching their attitude with all your might." Being a good couple means that the atmosphere is totally readable, and it may strengthen the bond between two partners. Reading the atmosphere and guessing requires that partners are sensitive to each other's emotional cues. Once a partner has picked up on these cues, he or she can decide how to behave and proceed with the disagreement in a way that preserves the relationship. For example, one participant says, "You have to look at each other sometimes and check the atmosphere and see how they express. If they are angry, you'll look for another direction. And if they seem happy, then you keep going with this direction." So the Japanese narratives reveal that explicit and direct communication may not always be the ultimate ideal, but rather that indirect and implicit ways of communication are valued. When Japanese participants talk about emotions, it becomes apparent that they may be less likely to disclose their emotions. Although some participants admit to expressing their emotions, they at the same time convey their wish to control emotions and to avoid an emotional discussion. This may be done by approaching the disagreement and the involved emotions in a business-like way. For example, one participant says, "We made presentation documents. If we discuss such a big topic without structure and just let it flow, it will end in an emotional discussion. So if it's an important issue, I think it's better to discuss it with business-like emotions." However, expressing emotions may sometimes be important, as it allows partners to pick up on cues or read the atmosphere. This does not necessarily mean that partners will explicitly name or voice their emotions. Instead, they may convey emotions through attitude. Here's an example of a participant who says that she tries to let the sadness naturally show itself. She tries to emit a kind of feeling, and she thinks that this will motivate her partner to fix his behavior. And finally, participants will say that they do not always show their emotions up front. For instance, two male participants say that sometimes they notice that their wives smile while they think that they are actually hiding their frustration somewhere. To conclude, Belgian and Japanese participants have certain similar ideas of how to deal with disagreement. On the one hand, for example, participants from both cultural groups think that a certain degree of open communication is important for solving a disagreement. On the other hand, Belgian and Japanese participants also differed in their perspectives in dealing with a couple disagreement. For instance, Belgian participants say they consider disagreement as an important process in romantic relationships, by which partners learn from each other and grow. They value tackling disagreement, which means that they are determined to solve disagreement. Yet Japanese participants say that couples tend to evade rather than tackle disagreement. To preserve the relationship, Japanese participants say that they value mind reading and aim to control their emotions. Interestingly, our findings are in line with the idea that in Belgium, autonomy is emphasized in relationships, while in Japan, harmony and adjustment are important in relationships. Tackling a disagreement may be valued in Belgium because it allows partners to achieve their goals and their autonomy. Yet evading disagreement, mind reading, and controlling emotions may be valued in Japan, where partners aim to adjust to others and preserve relational harmony. Our findings are also in line with quantitative research, which shows that Belgian couple interactions, as couples or partners engage in a disagreement, they tend to gravitate towards mutual annoyance. And this is an emotion that may help partners tackle disagreement in a vigorous way. While in Japanese couple interactions, we saw that partners tended to gravitate towards empathy. And this emotion may help the Japanese partners to take perspective and adjust. Hence, the culturally specific ideals and perspectives on dealing with couple disagreement resonate with the culturally salient relationship ideals and with the emotions that have been found to be common in couple disagreement interactions in each cultural context in Belgium and in Japan. Right. Thank you for your attention. And I look forward to any questions.